Hi, everyone. It's Phil Jones from Projector Reviews, and joining me is Richard and Kevin from Sharp NEC. Before we get started, we'd like to thank our sponsors, AV ProEdge and Meridio, for helping me put on this event where we get to talk to some of the leading projector manufacturers. And today, we are talking to Sharp NEC. So, Kevin and Richard, how are you guys today?
Doing well, thank you.
Doing great, thank you. Thanks for having us.
Now, both of these companies, when you hear Sharp and NEC, both of these companies have a long history when it comes to projectors. In fact, the very first training presentation I ever did back in like 1994 was how does a 3 LCD Sharp projector work? So when it comes to understanding projectors, both companies have a long history. But the question I have for you is, just talk about this merger between the two brands.
Sure thing, I'll take that. Well, we announced to the world that we were coming together as an organization really right before the pandemic hit. So going back to March of 2020. And our target was to bring the organization together as a joint venture in July. But the pandemic slowed that down a little bit from just government agencies needing to do their final checks and everything. So we finally came to market as a new company, a joint venture on November 1st of 2020. And from there, it's been great. So up until that point, we didn't have the opportunity to talk to the other groups at all. Just for antitrust rules, we had to stay separate.
Mm-hmm. So when I look at the boxes now, are they going to say Sharp NEC, or are they just going to, what's going to be on the box?
That's an excellent question. At this point, we're still operating, from a US perspective, we're still operating as two separate groups. So you have Sharp Imaging and Information. We'll continue to sell the Sharp branded products. And Sharp NEC, the joint venture that Rich and I are a part of, will continue to sell NEC branded products for the near future.
Okay. And like I said, both companies, when we talk about commercial displays, there's a huge variety of things. So they make large flat panels, digital signage, the list goes on and on. But today, because we're kind of Projector Reviews, we're here to talk about the projector aspects of it. So let's talk about what are some things that make an NEC or Sharp NEC projector special when it comes to education and business.
All right, so it depends on obviously the education market is split. So you have a K through 12, then you have higher ed. So when we look at the K through 12 space, what we think makes us unique is what we're coming out with next is our next NE&MC series projectors. And the reason they're unique is just the lamp life themselves. So we're looking at 4,000, 4,500 lumen projectors that nobody in the world would have ever anticipated you could get 10,000, 12,000, or 20,000 hours out of a lamp life. So when you look at it that way, and you compare that to what's on the market traditionally has been, a few thousand hours, it really extends the customer's usage for a single lamp.
Now that's a good point. Let's be honest, a laser light source is going to be more expensive than a lamp light source. And
Correct.
it can price out a lot of education, a lot of schools and school districts. So having a bulb is still an advantage there. The benefit of the fact that it can put out so much lumens is most likely you can run the sucker in eco mode. And by running it in eco mode, you can dramatically extend its life to the point where we're talking laser type life here. So you get a lot of brightness and a lot of life at a good value.
And that's the point. So, when we first came out with laser in the marketplace, 5,000 was the break-even point, right? Nobody ever thought you could sell a projector that would be sold in volumes to K through 12 education, lower brightness than that, right? So you had to still do the lamp technology. So when we're looking at the lamps, we're saying 20,000 hours in eco mode, as you said, that's only 20% down from what the maximum brightness is. So you're really not using that, dropping the brightness down too much. So customers traditionally really, they don't see that change. They don't really recognize a change in that brightness. So when we're looking at it in that regard, you're looking at 8 hours a day, even if this is a maximum usage case. What if you're using it 8 hours a day, 5 days a week? It's 38 weeks a year for school. you're still looking at 6.5 years of life on that single lamp. That's incredible. How do you, when you compare that to the upcharge, at least the 20 to 25% upcharge to laser for that same category brightness, it's a no-brainer because these lamps don't cost anything anymore. They're $60, $70 for a lamp. So even if you had to replace one, it's never going to reach that same price point that the laser projectors would be now.
So yeah, so that really gives school districts, like I said, the opportunity to get more bang for their buck. And of course, you guys, there's different resolutions that are offered. It's amazing how many letters are now in these resolutions.
Yeah.
XGA or XGA or WXGA. You guys have a wide range of resolutions that are available.
Correct.
Okay.
And there's a couple of reasons why, Phil. When you look at the XGA, for instance, there's still a lot of customers that just use XGA or 4x3 content. They haven't changed out the screens, so they still need a 4x3 projector. So that kind of dictates why they're buying them. Different parts of the world, right? Different, like South America, for instance, they may not be ready for wide XGA yet, or wide UXGA, so you need an XGA for that. So it really depends. And then the wide XGA and wide UXGA really comes down to the resolution desired by that customer.
Like we talk about advancements in bulbs, that helps education. What are some other things that make these NC and NE series projectors a great option for education?
I mean, mostly the price point. I mean, when we look at this category, it's really driven hard by the price point. So being the fact that it's a lamp based allows us to sell at a much more affordable price. The MCME, you're looking at a few $100s for a projector as opposed to $1,000. So that's a big thing. It has the feature set designed for education, where there's a lot of talk out there of should it have wireless, should it not? That's still an up in the air type of situation because they don't want to necessarily place it on the network because they don't want kids hacking in and doing things that they shouldn't do. But if you want a self-contained system, you still have the ability to have the wireless dongle and keep it self-contained in the classroom. So there's different ways to look at that. But yeah, we try to look at what the customer needs, what those connections would be, and how they're going to put it on the network and control it. We can do that as well. So if you look at, like you're looking at the input panel now, it says wired to wireless. Wired is going to just be really for asset management. You place it on the network. You use a tool such as our Naviset Administrator tool that is designed to look at everything on the network and control them, make sure that they're not wasting lamp life, leaving it on all day. Then, of course, you can see we have dual HDMI. We have the VGA still because there could be those customers that are using analog. And we have a loop out for a connection to a local monitor if they were so desired to do that. But
now, the ability to monitor it remotely, I can see being an IT guy liking that because you don't have to walk all the way across campus because a teacher can't get the projector working. Let me check it from my desk. I can see that being an absolute benefit.
Yeah, I mean, quick story. I used to coach football for little kids. And I was going by the high school. It was summer. Nobody's in the high school. There's a projector on in this classroom. If it was asset managed, they would have been able to recognize it and turn it off. But class has been out for a couple months, and that projector had been on the whole time, every day. So think of the lamp life they're just losing just by leaving that on. And I have no idea why they never turned it off. But that's an asset management piece, right? You have to do something for it.
Yeah, because the teachers and the students were ready to get out of there for the summer. So,
and they got out and they left it on.
The other thing too is the ability to replace something that was already up. So having some zoom and capability means that when that pole is already up there or that projector is already mounted, you kind of want to be able to take down the old one and put up the new one. And having a decent amount of zoom means that you can actually still utilize the old position to retrofit your projector.
Right, and that's where there's a distinct difference between the MC and the ME. So the MC has a 1.2 zoom, so it doesn't allow as much flexibility as you're saying, where if you step up to the ME, you get a 1.7 zoom. So obviously at that point, you have that extra flexibility to maneuver the projector where you need to, so you don't have to reinstall, up on the ceiling or the subfloor above. You can just put it right where the previous projector was.
Yeah, and And if you think about the overall cost of, because there's more to just the projection system than just the projector. It's the installation, the screen, and everything else. So even if the projector costs a few $100s more, the savings in labor costs from not having to move the pole or the
Right.
mount
Absolutely.
will easily
Absolutely.
make up for any additional premium you're paying for the additional zone.
Correct. And I'll do a different scenario to that on the higher end projectors when we get to it. Kind of remember or remind me to talk to that
Okay.
specifically, because there's something very unique that we have that I'm not aware of any other manufacturer has this capability,
Okay.
but it would definitely help from the install standpoint.
Okay. So moving up, I believe the next, if we want to move above there, above like NE and C series, we start getting into models like the P series, correct?
Correct. Correct.
Can you talk a little bit about these models and what make these special?
Yeah, so the P series was what we call our entry installation. And the reason we call them entry is because they don't give us the ability to motorize control of the lenses as far as focus, zoom, lens shift to that effect. And they don't have optional lenses. So that's why they're the entry installation. But that doesn't mean that they're not great projectors. They still have a very big wide zoom, so it's still 1.7. But for us, it's very important in this category is with this 605 and the 525 UL, we introduced what we call sealed cooling LCD cooling system. Sometimes we'll say sealed optics, but we're calling it a sealed LCD cooling system. It's a self-contained cooling system, as you're showing here, that allows us to keep the internal air over the optics from being contaminated from outside air. So what that does is it eliminates, one, dust getting on the panel or getting on the lens, which in itself is two different ways. One, it's going to knock down the brightness, and another is just going to distort the image up on the screen. So with that system, it keeps everything self-contained. All the cooling coming in from outside is really only for the electronics. So it's a brand new. And now this is the first one on the market in this category that has this sealed optical engine for LCD-based projectors. It's always been there for DLP, right? So for DLP projectors, it's been there. But for LCD, this is brand new.
Maintenance and service is something that we all have to be concerned with. Nobody
Correct.
wants to walk across the room, across the building to monitor a projector. No one
Right.
wants to have to go up there once a year and clean a filter. No one wants to go up there once a year and change a lamp. So lamp life, sealed optics, the ability to remote monitor it, all of those things reduce the overall operation costs of the units that you're selling.
Right.
So now what are some other things about this model that stand out?
Well, you brought up one point that I didn't mention during that long-winded response. The fact there's no filters. So they're LCD-based projectors with no filters. So when you're looking at the entry level and then you're moving up to the next series, the install, the PA, we're filter free, which in the market, that's the only LCD projectors that are. So as you said, yeah, we put laser in and we can put it up on the ceiling. We don't have to worry about maintenance. Well, yeah, you do if you have a filter. We don't have those filters, so we don't have that same kind of worry. So that's a different scenario right there in itself, right?
Yes. Yeah, and the picture quality, of course, we've reviewed several Sharp NEC projectors, and the picture quality has been outstanding for its price point. One thing that stood out was a lot of times you'll hear these big brightness ratings that are built into these projectors, but by the time you get a halfway decent picture, you're getting about half that. So it's 8,000 lumens, but if you want Ferrari red to be Ferrari red, it's about 3,000. So and one thing I've noticed when I was doing the last review of a Sharp NEC projector was even in its brightest modes, the picture quality was still good. So a lot of times to get the same quality picture that I was getting from a 5,000, 6,000 lumen in Sharp NEC projector, I would have to buy a 9,000 lumen projector. And because by the time I dumbed it down to make the picture quality right, I had to give up 30% to 40% of the brightness. And that was one of the things that I noticed with the Sharp NEC models was like I said, some of the you get to utilize all of the brightness that's
Yeah.
advertised when you're watching something. It's not just torch mode for watching cartoons or something, or looking at animation or something like that. So it's an actual usable amount of brightness. So I wanted to point that out. I wanted to point that out as well.
So when you're looking at the 605, when we say it's entry again, the reason is that I said that no optional lenses, but it still has manual lens shift, so horizontal, vertical, and still, a fairly good zoom with 1.7. If we can't be perfectly centered, or the other projector wasn't perfectly centered, we can shift the projector side to side from a lens shift standpoint and keep a square image on the screen without using any digital correction, which is something we don't want to do, right? The more digital correction, the less information we have on the screen, the more jagged lines will become. So this allows us to prevent that, right? So that horizontal and vertical lens shift adds that capability as well.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of horizontal and vertical lens shift for pretty much any application, because the old projector, the lens was on this side, now the new one's on this side.
Yes.
Or it was in the middle.
That's a problem.
And things like that. Even in my own personal applications, even for a home theater projector, I would not buy a home theater projector without a horizontal and vertical lens shift, because I built the cubby that it was only the place I could put it, and it's not completely aligned with the screen. But I never thought about it because I had a horizontal. I just lens shifted it, this way. But then someone gives me a projector and I want to take it upstairs from my lab up to my media room, and the thing is off the image. And then I am not gonna particularly keystone it, because I want all the resolution I paid for. And even so that's kind of a deal breaker for my own personal application in my own media room. So I can, and like I said, the whole goal is to reduce the cost of retrofit and installation.
Absolutely.
And this ensures that if you have horizontal vertical lens shift and a good amount of zoom, most likely if you buy the projector, it's going to work in your current application and it will save you money. Okay.
Another upside on the P series is we move into HD-based connections. So that's, obviously that's a fairly normal connection in the world today, fairly standard, just because of the cost, right? The infrastructure to install that in any location is so much cheaper than running multiple video cables and audio cables, right?
Yeah, long HDMI cables are quite expensive. So
correct.
Cat 6E is not that expensive.
No,
so
it's
if you're gonna
13.
run something, if you're gonna run something 30 or 40 feet, HD-based T is a definite benefit when it comes, and it maintains great picture quality, and it's universal. So
Correct.
that is another one.
And we add a LAN connection as well. Sorry, because we want to be able to place that on the network for asset management, but keep the video self-contained in the system. They usually don't put that HD-based T on the network. They want a separate LAN port. So we do that as well, especially on the education side.
But a lot of your projectors, even if they are not 4K, can accept 4K. Does this one do that? I'm not sure.
Yes, it does. Yes, it does.
Okay.
Yeah. So we'll accept the 4K for future connections.
But there's a huge importance for that, because when I saw that, I was like, well, why do I need to feed a 1920 by 1200 projector 4K? You know why? Because a lot of times you go to a conference room or even a classroom, what is the large display in the front, and then to the left is like you may have monitors on the walls, and those monitors are 4K monitors. And if you do not, the system will reduce its resolution to the lowest input. So being able to accept 4K means those monitors on the side are getting their maximum resolution, and you're just feeding the projector an even better signal. So you're not dumbing down the entire system in order to do this. Now you could buy fancy switchers and distribution that can do that for you, but it would cost more than a projector. So
correct. So what's the point of that, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, that's a great point. That's very, very good point.
Even in my lab here, I was reviewing this one of these Sharp NEC projectors at the same time as I had another ultra short throw projector sitting in front. So I have two screens. One screen I can drop, and it's for my traditional throw projectors. matte white, and then I have another project screen that I can drop for ultra short throw. Well, I both have them connected to a switching distribution system that has
Okay.
connections for, you know, a 4K Blu-ray player and my Apple TV and my Amazon and all of my other things. And a lot of times when I put a business projector in that mix, it dumbs down the video going to the home theater projector. And that's a pain in the butt. I physically have to disconnect each one from the system and go back and forth in wiring. With the Sharp NECs, I just plug everything in,
And
and
it
if
just
I wanted
automatically.
to, and it just worked. So if I wanted to look at the business unit, and then I wanted to maybe later look at the consumer unit, the 4K consumer unit, I didn't have to be like a switchboard operator,
Right.
changing
Right.
cables and everything else. So there's some advantages to it, and a lot of
Oh yeah.
classrooms will have 4K displays, or conference rooms or boardrooms will have those 4K displays. So it didn't seem like much, but it's a big deal to do that.
Yes.
Okay. So let's move on and talk about the bigger guys.
The bigger guys.
So now so now let's talk a little bit about these PA series. This is a new
Okay.
model. Can you talk a little bit about this guy right here?
Oh, I could talk all day. Sorry, Tim. Yeah, this is kind of our bread and butter from the install category, the PA, what we call our PA series. So the previous generation, we introduced what we called sealed optics, which are a little bit different. This new PA 1004 is basically the same, optical system that P605 unit had. A little bit different only in the sense that they're larger panels. So we go from a 0.67 up to a 0.8 panel. So you have to change the optics a little bit. But again, the big thing here is that it completely seals the optics, so we're not ever contaminating the LCD panels.
Back to the maintenance thing we talked about before, right?
Exactly.
We've been talking about it a bunch, but we didn't really go back and cover it. Many of your models are LCD.
We have both, right? So for Sharp NEC, we have DLP and we have LCD. The P series has a mixture of DLP and LCD. The PA is always going to be LCD. And then there's what we call our PX, which is DLP. Really, there's what we consider two different kind of applications. So both can work higher education, no problem. The color renditions of our DLPs are very similar to the LCD. LCD is going to be a little bit stronger when we're looking at graphics classes, art classes, things where your photograph classes, photography classes. I mean, that's going to really dictate whether you want LCD versus DLP for the most part, right? You're going to see that. If it's a longer use case, we think it's DLP based. So then we would recommend DLP based projectors for that up to 24/7 and stay away from that LCD type of product. But we have them both. Right.
Okay. So you basically just picked, you just utilize the imaging technology that you believe is going to work best for the particular use case in that application, whether it's high brightness or just a little bit more saturated or wider color gamuts and things like that.
Correct. These guys are, more for that higher ed corporate. It's going to really want that color rendition.
And of course, laser. And we've talked about the benefit of a laser, and the brightness of these laser light sources continue to grow and grow and grow, and they just offer a huge amount of reliability. Do you pay a premium on a laser over a bulb? Yes, but that premium means that sucker will run pretty much, for a decade before you really have to worry about what's going on.
I think it's important when we look at the laser projector, because we can adjust the brightness. I think we need to take in, we say laser lifetime 20,000 hours. That's at maximum brightness. If we take anything below that, it's extended, right? So we can get 30, 40, 50,000 hours in eco mode, different versions of eco mode. That's great. That's important. But I think more important is understanding the need for the customer. So what are they really looking at on a screen, right? So as you know, with bulb technology, if you spec the 6,000 lumen projector, you'd get 6,000 for 100 hours, and right after that, you'd start seeing closer to 5,000 lumens, and that's technology. Laser doesn't do that. So what we allow it to do is we could say, okay, we want to put it at 5,000 lumens and leave it, and it will stay there for 20, 30,000 hours. So the customer would never see a degradation in brightness or color rendition. Totally different way of looking at it from a laser standpoint than just saying, oh, there's 20,000 hours. Really, what is it doing for the customer?
Exactly. Especially if you get in applications where you're large, like museum or higher, or really cool applications where you got two of them together and you don't want
Correct.
them to age, the light to age differently, and half the screen is a different brightness than the other. So when you're trying to do
Right,
things
right.
like edge blending, you're trying to stack multiple projectors together. They went out of the way to, in the boardroom, to calibrate it and make sure that the corporate red is the corporate red. You want it to be like that for several years. So when they go in
Yes.
and check their print work or their photography work or their commercial, that it still actually looks right. That's one of the benefits of the laser. It's almost like a set it and forget it. Once you dial it in, it's pretty much going to stay that way for a very long period of time.
Yeah, you've been in the industry for a long time, so you recognize when you're looking at lamp-based technology from center to edge, it's
Mhm,
typically a fairly decent drop off, right? You
mhm,
can look
mhm,
at 20%.
mhm,
Laser doesn't have that same phenomenon. So
mhm,
when you're stacking or edge blending, you don't see
mhm,
that drop off at the blend area because
mhm.
it's a continuous brightness across the screen. That's a
Um,
big difference with laser that you didn't have with lamp-based technology.
and you guys have some really cool blending and projection mapping capabilities built in, and software and stuff like that to help the integrator to do this if they need to do this. Okay.
There's
So,
built-in hardware wise, and then there's software available,
okay.
or even
Yeah.
camera-based.
So we've already talked about the importance of having 4K UHD inputs. So if this is utilized along with other displays, you are sure that this is not going to degrade your resolution because it cannot accept the signal. So you have a million different inputs on here: dual HDMI, DisplayPort, HD base T. You can even send out the HD base T to a second projector, kind of loop them
Yeah,
together.
yeah.
Yeah,
So
which helps.
that's unique in the industry because it's basically a switcher. So I can connect up to four different displays, so four different
Mhm.
projectors. Take a 200-inch diagonal screen, put four different screen or projectors on it. Just inputs to one, daisy chain to the others, and I'm ready to
Yeah.
go. No
Which
degradation
eliminates
in
a
the
piece. You're
image.
not, yeah. And you don't have to be up there. If you're using multiple projectors, you don't have to have a splitter up there or some sort of
Correct. Right.
distribution
It eliminates
amplifier,
that. Right.
or run
Saves a lot of
multiple lines.
cost.
Yeah,
Saves a
save a
lot
lot
of
of
cost.
cost, simplifies installation.
Yep.
You just got to run a little bit of Cat 6 about this far to between the projectors. And of course, when it comes to these higher end projectors, there's lens flexibility. Can you talk about the lens flexibility? I know you want to come back and talk about this.
Yeah. So, well, it's important when we're looking at the 1004 right now because we have motorized lenses, but there may be a lot of customers out there that have older NEC projectors that have manual lenses.
Mhm,
And so what this allows them to do is buy the projector and not have to purchase a new lens. The last generation PA, you couldn't do that. You couldn't put the manual lenses on. You had to move to a motorized. But there's
mhm,
so many universities that have used previous generation PA series projectors that
mhm,
now you can plug those into this in a manual fashion and save yourself, a couple $1,000s for a lens.
mhm, mhm,
So it's
mhm.
a huge benefit to the universities in that regard because they don't have to buy everything.
And also kind of extends your lens lineup because now you have the powered options and
Yes,
the legacy manual options that you can actually
correct,
choose from.
correct. So we go from ultra short throw to 7.0 distance away and
Yes,
everything in
yes,
between.
exactly. I like power because once it's up there, I would much rather just take
Yes,
the remote and go, let me move
Right.
this over,
absolutely,
let me move that
absolutely.
over, than climb up on a ladder. But hey, if you know I'm only going to shoot it there, and I'm going to climb up on that ladder one time in that big lecture hall and put the old lens in. I know this lens is going to work for this distance, and I don't. You could do that as well. They're all installation projectors, but sometimes it's permanently mounted for years. That's where the manual is perfectly fine. But sometimes
Absolutely. Yeah,
it's a
yeah, yeah.
museum art installation, and then now it's going to now because of social distancing, you're using a large, tent outside, for your classroom, being able to quickly adjust and move and shift and everything
Right.
with the powered stuff really
That's where the
helps.
motorized comes in much better. Yeah.
During the age of COVID, students are coming back to school, but
Yes.
they need to be further apart. Because they're further apart, they sit further away from the screen, which requires larger screens, which and larger screens require more brightness. Or
Yes.
now that projector is thrown way in the back, and you can swap the medium throw for a long throw lens and still throw it to the particular screen you're looking at. So there's lots of flexibility there. So paying a little bit of a premium now because of the situation we are in just makes it safer for everyone in the classroom, and it kind of helps with that social distancing thing that we talked about.
Yeah, and even at the K through 12, that's important just from the fact of they don't have such a depth in the room, but they're still spread out. So they're going to need a larger image than they can traditionally pay for from a large format display, right? They're just not going to be able to have that kind of cost from that. So it's a lot easier to put a projector there.
Yes. I've seen like now there's like, yeah, they're going to replace their screen, or now you see combination screen. I just did a review on a combination whiteboard / screen that went up to, like, they were doing sizes that are like 150 to 150 inches. So you have a whiteboard that's 150 inches that you can also show video on, and having this type of brightness means that the kids in the back of the room can easily see. You write bigger
Correct.
on the whiteboard, and the periodic table is bigger on the
Correct,
whiteboard, so they
yeah.
can actually see it in the back of the room. Is there any other unique, notable features, products you would like to talk about in your lineup before we let you go?
I think just the 4K scenario. So when we look at, there's a couple different 4K projectors in our lineup, one being in the P series and one being the PX. And it's very important to understand that these 4K displays, as opposed to being 4K ready, they're 4K UHD. So they're the exact same resolution as the large format 4K that are on the market. So again, to your point, you don't have to worry about the different resolutions or kicking down to a different resolution. It's going to be exactly the same resolution on that projector as it is on the large format displays.
We could talk forever about Sharp and NEC's lineup of products. So I really encourage you guys, your viewers, to go out and check out the Sharp NEC and see all of their offerings. So they have projectors at every price point. So whether you're looking at a small education, moving from classroom to classroom, or a gigantic, 10, 20,000 lumen installation one for a concert venue, they have a solution for you. So Kevin and Richard, thank you for coming and talking to us about Sharp NEC's lineup of projectors.
Thanks for having us.
Yes, thanks for having us. Appreciate it.
Okay, so take care, everyone, and we will talk to you soon.
All right. Goodbye. Thanks.